Welcome, my friends, to another day of Kauffman Writes, the first creative writing show on the internet for inspiration, motivation, strategy, discussion, advice, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit of procrastination. But don't worry, I won't tell anyone. Welcome to World Building Wednesdays. And am I excited? Do I love chatting about different types of worlds that I'm excited about? And we're going to be digging into it. So, first off, let me hop into the comments. And awesome. It looks like we got the full crowd here. Atomic, welcome, welcome, my friend. Clearly, I don't know how to spell Wednesdays for some reason today. I don't know how I missed that. That was hilarious. Marta, welcome. Joelle, great to see both of you. I was like, Atomic, I don't even know how I missed that. I legitimately don't know how I missed that. And you point, and I'm like, wait, did I like add a D somewhere? I'm like, no, yeah, there's a D. I was like, well, thanks for that. It's all fixed now. No one will ever know the difference unless they see it on LinkedIn. So awesome. So you found yourself at World Building Wednesdays. So this is a series I've started for the past couple weeks. I'm treating it as a pseudo workshop series so that we can really dig into how do you structure a world for your story, whether you're working on a nonfiction world or maybe you're coming up with something that's like a science fiction or fantasy or something in between. We're going to dig into it in just a second. Now, some housekeeping first. So if you're watching this on the replay, don't worry, I've got you covered. There will be time codes added at the end of the stream, so that way you can hop to the part of the video that brings you the most value. And excellent. The world building recap. So what are some of the things that we've touched upon these past couple Wednesdays? This is world building workshop number 3. And don't worry, after the world building workshop, we'll still be doing our daily writing sprint. Let me tell you, my friends, I am like so excited to get last Scarecrow to this scene. Something crazy is about to happen. So hopefully I'll get there in today's writing sprint. All right, and where we at right now? Appreciate the sacrifice I make for you to stay awake. You know, Marta, we're helping you with your insomnia over here. Mixing up the time a little bit for a couple days, my friends. I know in the early days of Kauffman Writes back in January, February, I tested out a bunch of different times. 5 p.m. Mountain Time. This time, or the time that I've been doing, has seemed to be what's worked best. I might be play testing a couple different times again, generally around the same area for Monday through Friday, as I'm continuing to make sure that we're streaming live at the best time so I can help and serve the most writers out there. Let's see, what do we got here? That shows how important it is to have someone else look at your work. Hey, what's up, John? Welcome to the stream, my friend. I'm into Poland is way past vodka time. Well, it depends on maybe what part of Poland you're in. Marta might be able to fill us in. Okay, so World Building Wednesdays. Let's dig into it. So the last couple Wednesdays, I was like, I'm thinking back to last week's. I'm trying to think if last Wednesday's stream was kind of laggy or not. Possibly it might have been, but I don't recall. So we've gone into a couple different things with how to build a world for your story. Now, world building is so important. Let's say that you write a story with a character journey, a plot, and the character is going through the world, but something still doesn't feel right about the world itself. Maybe it feels like the culture is off. Maybe the religion doesn't feel right. Maybe the houses don't feel right. Maybe the world, if it's like a fantasy world, feels too much like a cookie cutter type of Lord of the Rings world. Because world building is an element of every single aspect of where your characters go through, the settings, the belief systems, the society, the structure, all the things that go into creating a believable world. If you want to boil it down into a single easy idea, think of it like this. When you're traveling, when you yourself in the real world are going on a road trip, are traveling to a new town, whether it's a town off the highway or a brand new city, every city, every area you go to has an initial vibe. Maybe it's a result of the people who are there. Maybe it's the types of buildings. Maybe it's the foundation, but it has a vibe. Your world has to have a vibe. If it doesn't have a vibe, it's not going to be believable. Your readers will not connect with the world, and then it will not feel like its own universe that serves your character's journey. All right. So what did we hop into in, let's see. So for the first workshop, let's see, I researched. So what I did was I just gave some very general tips that I've used in world building and for like building a world, just very common tips that I've seen, some best practices. If and then same workshop two, I went into my specific technique and how I developed a world. Interesting. Okay. So what we're going to do, and by the way, so I'm just pulling these up as a refresher, both for myself and if you want to know more, right? If you want to check out these workshops, make sure down in the details below, if you're here on YouTube or on the Kaufman's Corner channel, check out the previous workshops. I dig into each of these sections in detail and with helping you with world building. My goal is to continue to build on this every week, provide new values, new conversations, so that way we're always talking about world building on Wednesdays, but we're always still having a fresh conversation. So, what I wanted to hop into today, yep, we went into some of that. So, what I wanted to really think about today with world building is at heart, how does world building work? Like when somebody says world building, like what what how do you develop it? What's the process? Shouldn't a world just come to life as you write your character's story? If you're writing a story about a an anti-hero, let's go real world today, right? Anti-hero, hero, serial killer trying to escape the law. Maybe it's going to be a heist movie, right? How does this world feel specific and believable? Even let's say if it takes place in modern day and age in this present day, how does it feel like your own unique world? There's so many different ways you can go about it, right? Let's say even if it takes place with our current society, current government, in whatever area of the world you want it to take place in, you have to take into consideration how the specific area, the settings and the locations that your story takes place in, how it's going to affect your hero and your characters. You have to think about how the settings and the locations will affect your overall plot. You want to think about how do the characters themselves interact with the world. Now, let's make it a little smaller. So instead of saying world as compared to a universe, we're going to start super small, super small. Make it as easy as possible. Yes, Marta. I ignore all the comments. That's what it is. Like Jared's talking about world building over here, and everyone's like, "All right, well, we need some shots and alcohol for this conversation." You're like, "Cheers." You know what? If there was an alcohol of choice, you're right. No, if there was an alcohol of choice, mine was absolutely always Jaeger. Oh, that was the one that I used to do all the time. Way back when I was much more of a drinker and a partier back in the day. So Jaeger was definitely my go-to. And then my brother came up to me one time and he's like, "Yeah, so Jared, you know what? My favorite alcohol is Jaeger." And I'm like, "You stole that from me, little Kauffman." Oh man, I know. I was like, always a good one. But all right, world building. So yes, Jaeger bombs are the absolute best, by the way. Absolutely. Come to Poland and I can have it for free. Woo! Free Jaeger shots. It was like, what better reason to go to Poland just for free Jaeger shots? Jaeger bombs all around. So when we think about world building and we think about what goes into divide. creating your world for your story. I want you to make it as easy as possible. Think about it in one specific scene. So let's give a very specific example. Let me pull up bullet points, make sure y'all can see. So you're going to take one scene from your story. One scene, let's go, it takes place in, let's do a rom-com. We'll mix it up. We'll do a little romance. One scene, rom-com in a coffee shop. What is the culture of this world? If it takes place in present day society, takes place present day, what's going to stand out about your story in particular? Is it that all of the characters in the world are going to be more, all characters are going to be more comedic? Every character is going to be works. Every character is a workaholic. What world events are going on right now? World events are a great one. What world events are going on at this time? Now, sometimes the world events can be related to your story, and sometimes they don't have to be. Now, if you think about your character, right? So we're going to have a rom-com, characters going into a coffee shop. And every character they come across is probably comedic, a workaholic, something very lighthearted, right? And maybe it's something that you would experience going into a coffee shop on your way to work. But what's going to make this scene and your world specifically stand out is the way that the characters interact. So even though the character is going to have dialogue that's furthering their narrative and furthering their journey, everything that's happening in it has a specific culture, whether even though like they might go into different coffee shops throughout the story, or they might go into different settings, the overall culture is still going to be serving your world. Refer to what I said earlier, the vibe. What is the vibe of this setting? What is the vibe? And then how is that vibe determined? And how is it determined? Now, I touched upon the characters. It can be determined by how the character's actions can be determined by their dialogue, can be determined by what is in the setting itself, right? So items and things specific to the setting, or let's say the location is a better word choice. Items and things specific to the location. And hey, what's up, Mommy Tally? Welcome to the stream. Welcome, welcome. We're having some riveting conversations over here about world building and alcohol. So one of the two. And you know, John, that's a really good point, right? So like things like alcohol, things like pot or drugs are absolutely a thing that can go into world building, right? If you're creating a character that's a stoner, or if you're writing a character that's an alcoholic, or maybe they're a functioning alcoholic, right? That's going to be that could be a part of the world. You know, a really good example, a comedy show that I saw a while back, a Louder Milk, it's a half-hour comedy, and clearly it's about a guy with anger issues and alcohol, and it's about the alcohol support group. But you can tell wherever he goes, because his character is so angry, even though it takes place in present day society, it takes place in the here and now, the style of the dialogue with each of the characters and the specific settings that he goes to serve his ironic outlook on life. And it always sets up for having a payoff. So he has like an ironic outlook at the beginning of the episodes. By the end, oh, you know what? He's had to learn his story, or he's had to learn the moral of the episode because of this ironic outlook. And it's shown through the specific characters that show up. It's shown through the settings of the Alcohol Anonymous support group. It's shown through, and that takes place in a church. It's shown through the bars that they go to. Comedies generally love to stick to bars. Bars are fun comedy settings. Restaurants tend to be, coffee shops tend to be comedy settings for a reason, because inherently a bar and a coffee shop have an inherent vibe. They're easy to already work off and create a pre-existing culture. Or they're just Polish. You know, the world we're going to create is going to be a Polish bar. That's what we're doing. Or maybe we are functioning alcoholics that are writing characters. I think you're channeling what's that classic author who's known for being an alcoholic? Hemingway. It was like, I'm pretty sure that was Hemingway, who was like this very classic example of the alcoholic writer. Yeah, and you're like, sometimes maybe us writers need that need the right liquid courage to help inspire that specific character. It's interesting in my experience when writing, and there's been times where I've definitely been writing where I've been drinking, writing where I've been sober, and writing doing other things. And I think being in different states of mind help you to see different sides of your storytelling that you otherwise wouldn't have been expecting. I think it's absolutely an interesting experience. I think if you're going to be drinking, or be drinking more heavily, or be smoking, or doing any number of things, my recommendation is always be intentional. If you're going to do it with the intention of what you want to write, and knowing, hey, I'm going to be thinking differently, knowing this. Unless that's already your standard, unless that's already ingrained in your writing style, then you already have a style that works for you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Dialogue is a huge way, especially with comedy. A lot of comedy tends to rely on, or tends to be more dialogue heavy. Rom-coms are like such a classic example of, they're either dialogue joke setups or they're situational setups. And yet, both of those are great examples of elements that go into world building. Absolutely, 100%. I think comedies just tend to be the easiest example of what, not generic, but just the best example of easy world building, right? Because you already know the vibe you get if you go into a bar. Now, if you're going to write a story that takes place in a bar, all you have to do is change and elevate the way you want your bar to feel, right? And we know why people go to bars. People go to bars to have fun and party, or they go to bars to get away and run away from their problems, or they might go to bars for other specific reasons that could be unique to your story, right? So that's always a really easy one. Yeah, let's see, Polish bar. I want to see one. Marta, sounds like you know some good bars there. Hopefully you get some good inspiration out of them. Atomic, by the way, I just want to highlight, like, really good for you, man. Really, like, that's absolutely incredible. I've had a lot of friends who've dealt, and I've definitely been in relationships with friends who've dealt with differing levels of alcoholism and drug addiction, and being able to overcome anything like that is such an ordeal. So really, like, amazing work for you, man. Really, that's awesome. Plus, being able to drop weight as well is a huge plus. I think apparently today we're creating a world that's going to be involving some alcoholics in a Polish bar. I think this is the story we're creating today. You're like, what's well, I feel like we're gonna need a good name for our alcoholic bar, Polish bar over here. Marta, you're gonna have to be able to give us some context on what a Polish, what this type of Polish bar is going to be like. And that's like a perfect example, right? Like, how do you make it its own? Let's see. Let's see. Let's to think of. Yeah, so that's actually a really good point, right? So when you're building a vast world, the types of people that inhabit a world are is a perfect example of it, right? So that's why comedies, that's why they take place in bars and coffee shops because we know the common type of people who inhabit them. But let's say you're working on like a fantasy, like a grand fantasy adventure. Think of something like Lord of the Rings. Think of something like Game of Thrones, right? Who are the creatures that inhabit it? Orcs, goblins, elves, trolls, dwarves, gnomes, all those creatures. Now, the the challenge and the opportunity that we have to overcome is how do we use creatures that are generally pre-existing creatures, tend to be called tropes. How do we use them in a way that feels the same but different? So it feels like we're telling a different story. Is this story going to have dwarven elves? Is that the way you do it with your story, right? Because any reader, one who reads fantasy, has probably seen 20 different variations of elves. Another really great example of world building that relies heavily on pre-existing culture is the vampire and the werewolf stories, media, books. A lot of them very much started with the Dracula lore and mythology, and they've just become very popularized through sex appeal and blood and staying alive and the whole romance. And then we went through Twilight era, and then a lot of the Interview with the Vampire and Anne Rice. And the more stories that are added to the world, the overall universe that become popular, that become bestsellers, then get added to the minds of readers, and then gets added to our overall knowledge of that type of world. Let's see. It's not so easy to create a comment, by the way. You need to be intelligent to pretend. Mm-hmm. Yeah, John and Marta, what you guys are saying about like comedy, like with comedy myself, like I'm not. I can do comedy, I can do comedic moments, but comedy has never been one of my strengths. And I absolutely recognize that. Like dramatic storytelling has always been huge strength of mine, but comedy, it's something that I have to work on. And there's definitely some comedy stories and scripts that I have, but I know it's not as strong. And I look at it as just one of those skills that needs refining over time. Absolutely. And then, I mean, even seeing from like your work, John, like you definitely have some really good comedy chops. Marta, we'll be looking forward to it. I'll be like, all right, who's this story about the Polish bar? Yeah, so this is actually a really good call out. So Marta and John. So y'all know it actually if you're just hopping into the stream where we're talking about a mix of world building and apparently we're creating a story around an alcoholic Polish bar. But if you're coming into the stream, this actually airs to 5 separate social media accounts. So this streams to YouTube and Facebook, which are my main 2 predominant audiences. And then it also streams to LinkedIn, Twitch, and X. 5 social media platforms. My motto, my methodology is be in as many places as possible with the resources that I have. So, what I've learned and what I've heard from the community before, John and Marta, is that the Facebook chat, it does work and it is functional, but YouTube's live stream portion or the stream through YouTube is just a little faster, little quicker from what I've heard. Okay, so as, as we're working on developing our alcoholic Polish bar, so this is actually a really great example, right? So if you were going to create a world about an alcoholic Polish bar. Perfect. Clearly, we're creating a comedy. What types of things would go into a world like that, right? So beyond the characters, I know let's see who mentioned it. Soul, because I know you're the one who mentioned characters was important. Absolutely, right? So what types of characters? Maybe you'll get, maybe it'll be a mix of Polish alcoholics, and maybe we'll have some foreigners in there. Maybe that will create some good contrast for comedy. Let's see. Throw in some backpackers. I think that would be interesting. So beyond the characters, actually, I should just make that its own thing. Let's do that. So beyond the types of characters, what else is going to add to just like the culture of our like Polish bar, right? You're going to have you're gonna have to make the decision. Does this take place right now in today's date, 2024? The year and the times will heavily affect times heavily affect your world. If it takes place today, we're in a year where we know all the turmoil that's going on in the rest of the world, and that's going to influence your character's journey. But let's say that it takes place in the year 2020, right? The journey is heavily influenced by the pandemic. So being aware of time period is very important. Knowing the culture. So this is an overall thing. What is the culture of this bar? And I'm starting with the specific scenario, that specific setting of the bar, but we're also going to want to understand what's the culture of like the city, what's the culture of the town, right? Every town is going to have its own culture. I can speak to my time from California. Hollywood has a very different culture than San Francisco, as those cities have different cultures than Chicago, than New York. Each city has its own culture that's determined by the way the average person interacts with each other. It's determined by the types of the structure. Architecture is a great thing. So culture can be architecture. If I can spell architecture, if I can spell architecture correctly. It's, let's see, can be politics. Politics is a big one. Who's the governor? Who's the mayor? Is it a group? Is it a democracy? Is it what type of organization? Is it a head? Is it based off today's current politics? How does religion factor into it? And religion, especially in a bar, is going to be so important. Now, if this is a comedy, you can have religion as an undertone, but most likely you're going to have characters who show up who are drinking to forget their problems. You're probably going to have a religious character. Now, I'm not too familiar with Poland, but religion will probably factor into some of the characters. Let's see, what else? Architecture, politics, religion, economy. The economy is important. How much does it cost to buy a beer? How much will it cost me to buy a Jaeger bomb in this Polish bar? If it's cheap, the types of people who are going to be in there are going to be more on the broke side. If it's expensive, you're going to have people who are in there who are more on the classier side, or probably hardworking professionals and who are there after work. It dictates the types of characters that are going to show up in this Polish bar. Excellent. So I would say I kind of put architecture into like location, politics, religion, economy. And then let's see, I touched upon characters, time period. And I like to say time period. This is like current events. And then we touched upon dialogue as well. I think these are some good job market, for example, if many do mining. Absolutely, right? So the type, and I think job market is going to be heavily influenced by the economy, right? So and it's one of those things that are going to go hand in hand. But whatever type of like predominant job market, if this is like a Polish bar that takes place in like a small town, then the types of people there are probably going to be, you're going to see more predominant hardworking people, maybe a mix of younger people who want to like get out of town. But everyone's going to know everyone. Whereas if it takes place in a side corner of a very large city, most people probably aren't going to know each other except for the regulars. That was a really good one, Mommy Telly. Absolutely. Let's see. Let's say economy. Let's say job market. That was a good one. Absolutely. Let's see. I want to think of if there's any other major things that I haven't touched upon. So characters, time period. You could also say time period. I am saying events. You could technically put setting into this as well. Culture. Actually, let's make location its own. I think location needs to be its own because this will include setting and any predominant areas. And I'm going to include architecture like that. Excellent. All right. And then let's see. So we got architecture, politics, religion, economy, job market. These are all absolutely amazing things to touch upon in your world creation. Now, the real question that you end up with, if let's say you haven't created a world before, or let's say maybe you're newer to world building, how do you put all these things into your story and then make it believable? Now, that is the question that we answer for ourselves. How I would go about it, and every writer is probably going to have their own style, right? But you want to ask yourself, what are the biggest parts of the world that you want to stand out the most? Do you want the politics to stand out the most? Because part of the central plot is one of the characters is trying to get into be elected for something, right? Or maybe the character is broke. This happens a lot with comedies, right? All the characters are broke, so the economy is going to be a bigger factor in the story, right? So the type of world that you create goes hand in hand with the character's story that you're telling, which is why when I do story development, I always recommend starting off with the message you want to tell, the character, and then building out the world from that. But that's my personal style. Every style works. There's no right or wrong method. The great thing as a writer is you get to see the different styles, pick things that work, drop things that don't, and then figure out your writing method. All right, excellent. So I thought that was actually really good. We touched on some really good points. I could clearly talk about world building forever. So let's see. And I think last time I did more of a technique. I do like the alcoholic Polish bar. So maybe what we'll do next time is we'll probably go maybe do some like examples. And we'll do like a specific example of like, let's create a world together. And maybe that would be super fun. We could try that next week. Let's see. Okay. So I am very good with that. That's pretty good. I feel like I lose track of time once I start talking about world building. So with that, with world building out of the way, are you enjoying the stream? Don't forget to follow and subscribe. Join the community. Come join our alcohol-induced conversations today and learn a little bit more about all the things of storytelling. Kauffman Writes, our casual writing community, Monday through Friday. Saturdays, our story and critique show. And then this Sunday, I got a published author coming on, and we're going to be chatting about how do you network with writers, editors, and publishers. This Sunday's episode will be fire. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. So all the more reason to make sure you're alerted when we go live. Which brings us to that point of the stream, ladies and gents. It's that time for the daily writing sprint, because Kauffman has to get into Last Scarecrow. So if you're here in the stream with me, feel free to join along. If you're like, I'm feeling super inspired to go write about that Polish bar right now, you're more than welcome to. But let's say it's been a little bit of a longer day. We're streaming a little later today. Then totally feel free to kick back, relax, and I'll throw on the music as All Right Vicariously for the both of us. All right, let me pull up, save this, and bada bing, bada boom, music. Let me throw that up. You make a good comment, Atomic. The elements that you choose are absolutely Martian, great movie. Friends, iconic show. But they're both iconic for absolutely, right? And I think if you think of why was the Martians world iconic, because it takes place on Mars, so it takes place on what we imagine Mars to be like, in a world of isolation. Friends takes place in a very stereotypical coffee shop most of the time, and it has that upbeat, like always like cool people and trippy people and weird scenarios, and the coffee shop culture is a predominant factor of Friends. An isolated, not alien, but just like an isolated, almost alien feeling planet, right? And I think that's a really good call out, right? That each of those worlds have a specific culture, even though they're completely different stories. Absolutely. Maybe it'd be fun actually to also dig into like really popular worlds in the future and why they work as worlds. That could actually be fun to do. I have to write down these ideas. Okay, so let's see, where am I at last Scarecrow? That's right. So I am at the end of not the end, where we are at an intense scene right now. At long last, Scarecrow is finally reunited with Mr. Quilt. And they are finally going to go to the graveyard of the last and uncover the magic. But first, they're still trapped in the dreamscape. Memoryscape, cloudscape. I'm going to have to better define what this memoryscape actually is in the second draft. But needless to say, so far they've experienced memories, vivid memories of each of their companions. Gore the grizzly bear, who is, I'm treating him as he's basically made a deal with some weird creature and he's basically a slave. We have Stretch the snake, who is seen being tortured, and then he tried to see the skunk's character, but he's basically got kicked out of the memory. And now we're going to go see our young Pebble, our pixie. All right. Marta, I'm eager to see what comes. I believe in you. I feel like we're going to be learning about Polish bars over here. All right, so I'm all ready. We got 30 minutes on the clock. And it's time right now. Awesome. Sounds good, John. Thanks, man. Marta, I'm glad you're getting some good action done on our Polish scene. Like best comedic bar scene ever. All right, man. All right. I think that's where I'm going to call it. Oh, wow. I was like, I knew that I had to get through that section. Once again, it's my my completionist side of me. I like when I have to get when I'm at the end of a section, I knew that I needed to wrap it up. Oh man, talk about another intense scene, especially as we're approaching the end of we're not the end, but we're getting close to we're getting close to the climax. Thing is, oh man, I think that this moment is really feels like the beginning, the real end of Act Two and the really beginning of Act Three. It's going to be a bit of a slow build up. Whew, man, literally quite a lot happened in that chapter. I want to say that the chapter I just did, what was that chapter? Oh, God, I gotta go find it. Chapter 35. That was definitely not an airtight escape. That was. Oh, man. Yeah, like literally that entire chapter, like literally a lot happened in that chapter. I'm like kind of amazed at literally all the ground that I tackled in that. I literally covered I covered three distinct character backgrounds. I covered three distinct character memories: the bear, the snake, and the pixie. We touched upon foreshadowing with Skunk. We reintroduced Quilt, and then we brought back the plot, the central plot with the first demon finding them once again, while also doing world building for the past. Oh my goodness. I feel like I covered so much ground in that chapter. That was probably one of the most like pivotal chapters that I've written so far, probably even more pivotal than the Crow chapter. Oh man, what a doozy. Which means that chapter 13 will be an airtight escape. All right, so this was chapter 36 is the escape. Now the escape probably makes a little bit more sense. Scarecrow, the heroes try to escape the first demon's reckoning. All right. The heroes try to escape the nest, the first demon's reckoning. Whew, there's the next chapter. 4 a.m. Poland. What? You're like Marta, that Polish bar scene must have been really good. Hey, what's up, Silent? Good to see you. Even though we're kind of at the end of the stream now. You just like caught me at the end of a really long writing sprint. Actually, it was like a really good sized writing sprint. I think that sprint probably went about an hour and 15 minutes. But I wrote a really good scene. The scene was fire. It was wonderful. Man, this continues to be an incredible story. My home is way better than any bar. Wow. After that writing sprint, clearly, if only I had a Jaeger bomb. All right. Well, I appreciate y'all for sticking out with me. If you joined in or you missed out on the first half of the video of the stream, make sure to go back and check it out. We had some really excellent, great, rewarding conversations about world building. We had some great conversations. So make sure you go out, check out the previous, the first portion of the stream if you missed out. Also, you can go into the comments or into the description below, and that'll show you the playlist for the previous workshops on world building from the previous World Building Wednesdays, which were also very helpful. So make sure you check that stuff out. That'll definitely help you with building the next world for your story. And I will be back tomorrow. Like I said, I'm going to be having a couple later times over the next couple of days. So I'll probably be back 6 p.m. Mountain Time tomorrow, trying out a little later. So I'll be back tomorrow. And that is all that I got for you today. Remember, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers.